You know that feeling, right? When you're so close to getting something done, to achieving a goal, but you just fall short right at the finish line? Well, today, we're going to talk about that razor-thin line between a huge win and a forgotten almost. It's all about that tiny last step that, well, changes everything. I love this quote from Haywood Brown because it just nails it. The real gut punch in life isn't just losing, it's the agony of almost winning. And to really see what this means, we're going to look at a pretty wild story from the history of invention. Okay, I'm pretty sure every single one of us knows the first name, Alexander Graham Bell, you know, the telephone guy. But that second name, Phillip Reis, yeah, probably doesn't ring a bell. And there's a really, really good reason for that. So, let's kick things off with a man who almost changed history, Phillip Reis. His story is just this perfect, kind of painful lesson in how you can do 99% of the work and still walk away with absolutely nothing to show for it. And listen, that is not an exaggeration. We're talking years before Bell ever entered the picture. This German scientist, Reis, had already designed and built a machine that could send sound using electricity. I mean, he had the idea, he had the device, he was right there on the brink of a world-changing discovery. And here's where it all goes wrong. Reis's incredible invention, this thing that should have made him a legend, had one tiny fatal flaw. The difference between it working and not working, the difference between sending just some muffled noise and sending clear human speech, it all came down to one little screw. But, you know where one story ends in frustration, another one often begins. Reis's dead end actually became the starting line for the guy whose name we all know today. Now, here's what's so interesting. Bell didn't just invent the telephone out of thin air. He was a student of this stuff. He actually studied what Reis had done, looked at his device, and he zeroed in on that one tiny point of failure. And the fix? You're not going to believe how small it was. All Bell had to do was adjust that one screw by a quarter of a turn. A quarter of a turn. That was it. That tiny little tweak was the missing link that let the machine transmit clear, understandable human speech. Unbelievable, right? So this is the real difference between them. Reis, he discovered the principle. He proved the whole idea was possible. But Bell was the one who made it work. He took the almost and turned it into done. He finished the job. Now, as you can probably guess, Reis wasn't too happy about this. He was convinced the invention was his, and this whole thing didn't just get argued about in labs. It went all the way to the US Supreme Court. They had to legally decide what it even means to truly invent something. I mean, just think about what was on the line here. Reis was arguing, hey, I did pretty much everything. The core idea, the machine, it's all mine. But Bell's whole argument was, well, an invention that doesn't actually work isn't really an invention, is it? And the Supreme Court had to make the call. And the court's decision was just absolute. They basically said, look, we get that Reis was a genius, that he laid the groundwork. But at the end of the day, his machine failed at what it was supposed to do. Bell's succeeded. And in the eyes of the law and of history, that's all that mattered. So why are we digging up a 150-year-old story about an invention? Because this whole idea, this trap that Reis fell into, it's absolutely timeless. It's something that we all risk falling into pretty much every single day. Seriously, think about it in your own life. That email you started but never sent. The project that's like 90% done. That great idea you have that you never quite follow through on. We are surrounded by our own almosts. Nobody gives you credit for a half-baked cake. They want the finished product. We are all in danger of becoming a Phillip Reis sometimes. It's so true, isn't it? You can be a hair's breadth away from victory and still lose. The gap between first and second place can be a tiny fraction of a second, but the difference in the outcome is huge. You know what they say? Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So, that leads to the big question. How do we stop being an almost person and start being a finisher? How do we make sure we become a Bell, not a Reis? The whole point here isn't just about massive inventions. It's about how we handle things every day. Going for excellence means you're willing to make that final quarter-turn adjustment, even when you're tired and think you're done. Not leaving things half done means you refuse to settle for good enough. And it's about learning from the people who actually get things across the finish line. Because, let's be honest, the world doesn't remember the person who almost did it. It remembers the one who did. At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this. The difference between being a forgotten name in a history book and being a legend can be as small as one quarter turn of a screw. So the next time you feel like stopping short, like leaving that last little bit undone, remember Phillip Reis. Finish the job. Don't just almost win. Win.